period. Période des questions. Senator Manning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the government leader in the Senate. Leader, victims advocates and legal experts are condemning the federal government's use of national security laws to suppress key evidence in a violent assault involving a Joint Task Force 2 soldier. Master Corporal Michael Spence avoided serious charges after the Justice Department, at the military's urging, invoked Section 38 of the Canada Evidence Act, normally reserved to protect classified information in terrorism cases, to prevent the victim from discussing her abuser's military role. Do you believe, Leader, it is appropriate for the Canadian Armed Forces to use national security laws to shield perpetrators of intimate partner violence, regardless of their status, in an effort to silence victims in Canadian courts?
Good question.
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question, Senator. My understanding is this government continues to recognize that gender-based intimate partner violence is a scourge, indeed an epidemic, requires urgent action, and this government is firmly committed not only to protecting victims of sexual violence and intimate partner violence through legislation that will be introduced to make murder motivated by hate, including femicide, a constructive first degree offense. And my understanding is the government is determined to bring such legislation forward as soon as possible. With regard to Section 38 of the Canada Evidence Act, I'm not in a position, nor would it be appropriate to comment on individual cases. It's the role of the Attorney General, as I understand it, to invoke this section of the Canada Evidence Act to protect information that, if disclosed, could be harm both international relations, national defense, or national security. But beyond that, I'm not in a position to comment.
Senator Manning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Retired Major Donna Van Houston, who works with battered military spouses and sexual trauma victims, said the government is sending the signal that it used national security to protect the reputation of JTF2. The retired major said, somebody who is not able to control themselves and beats their spouse, causing grievous bodily harm, should not be deemed a good soldier and should be dismissed if you can't control their anger. Leader, what message does this send to women across Canada, especially those in military families, about whether the justice system will stand with them at a time when they are most vulnerable, or put their efforts in protecting the institutions their abusers serve?
Senator Gold.
Well, look, I understand I understand the importance of this issue and the pain that is caused, certainly, to the victims and for those properly concerned with victims. But again, the invocation of Section 38 by the Attorney General is something upon which that deals with a specific case, and I'm afraid I'm not in a position to comment further. But I do understand the preoccupation.
Senator Carignan.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Leader, according to a damning report by NCIRA, an ongoing CSIS operation was halted following a political order directly from the Prime Minister's office, in complete violation of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service Act, since the decision was not taken by the Director of the Service or the Minister as required by law. The result, our agents have been put at risk, and Canada's reputation with our allies has been seriously compromised. Mr. Leader, what justification can the Liberal government possibly have for breaking the law, sabotaging an intelligence operation, and endangering those who risk their lives to protect our country? Senator Gold, thank you for the question. The agency in question, NCIRA in English, published a report which shed light on this situation, and we thank them for the report. And the government has committed to seeking to improve processes concerning intelligence to better serve Canadians and protect them. The government intends to take this report seriously. It is studying the recommendations by the agency and will provide its response to the recommendations shortly. Senator Carignan. In one case, the government overstepped the law by illegally halting a CSIS operation abroad. In another, it misused a provision supposed to protect classified information to silence a victim of domestic violence, preventing her from speaking about her attacker's military role. Senator Gold, how can Canadians trust a government that compromises both the safety of its intelligence officers and the right of victims to be heard? Senator Gold, as I responded earlier about the second part of your question, the reason why the Attorney General invoked Section 38 is something I cannot weigh in on. And concerning the recommendations and what occurred, which is the subject of the NSERA recommendations, which is the agency responsible for overseeing this field of activity, the government will provide a response to these recommendations shortly.
Let's go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is directed to Senator Gold. Sadly, Canada's oldest corporation, Hudson's Bay Company, is facing liquidation and creditor protection proceedings as it closes its operations. The company possesses a vital collection of historical documents and artifacts, which is preparing to auction off as part of these proceedings. The reported items include a foundational document, the original Royal Charter, granted by the previous King Charles, that is Charles II, in 1670, granting it vast trading rights and authority over much of what would become Canada. The Charter is regarded as one of the most important documents in Canadian history. Other significant items include Indigenous beadwork, tools, carvings, and ceremonial objects, fur trade memorabilia, paper documents, artwork, and many others, possibly 4,400 items. In April, an Ontario court gave the company permission to move forward with a sales process, although the company must return to court at a later date to detail exactly which items it wants to sell and how the process will unfold. There is significant concern from historians and Indigenous groups that these items could end up in private hands, potentially removing them from public access and oversight. My question is the Government of Canada taking specific actions to ensure that these invaluable pieces of Canadian and Indigenous heritage are preserved and remain accessible? And what actions have been taken and with what outcomes? Thank you.
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question. The government is aware of this situation and is following it closely. My understanding is, and this was shared before the court to which you made reference, that at the moment the government cautiously does not oppose the action because it has not yet been afforded the chance to catalog the artifacts to know exactly what may be put up for sale. As this is a matter, though, currently before the courts, I'm not in a position to provide any further comment at this time.
Senator Dasco, did you have a supplementary?
Yes, I have a supplementary. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has requested a halt to any auction because it believes the collection includes items of profound cultural, spiritual, and historical significance to First Nations people. What measures, if any, are you aware of or are being implemented to ensure that Indigenous communities are actively involved in the decision-making process regarding the future of the cultural heritage items included in the Hudson's Bay auction? Thank you.
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for the supplementary question. Again, I'm not in a position to comment on what, or I don't have an answer to your question, but it is an important one, and I certainly will raise this with the minister at my first opportunity.
Senatrice Clément.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For Senator Gold, government representative in the Senate. I'd like to start, though, by welcoming the new members of the African Canadian Senate Group, chaired by Senator Moody. So welcome to Senators Senior, Yuans, and Ince. I'm truly happy that there are now 10 members of that group and a truly encouraging number of Black MPs. Despite this growing representation in Parliament, I'm worried about the limited mention of priorities for Black Canadians from this new government. In the Liberal platform, there are 2 mentions. However, there are none in the mandate letter. I'd like to remind the government of the Black Justice Strategy. The African Canadian Senate Group has identified this strategy as a priority. The previous Minister of Justice was tasked with the development of this strategy in late 2022. In 2023, there was extensive consultation, and the roadmap was published in 2024. In February of this year, the implementation plan was released that outlined a 10-year framework to reduce Black overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. Senator Gold, what is the government's level of commitment to the Black Justice Strategy?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. This government is acutely aware of the systemic discrimination and burdens imposed by many institutions in our country on Black Canadian communities. I want to assure you and this chamber that the government remains committed, this government is committed to continuing to implement Canada's Black Justice Strategy, and we'll have more to say about that in short order.
Senatrice Clément.
So at this point, what can we say to the diversity of Black communities in this country who are afraid of losing momentum? What more can this government say at this point to reassure them?
Senator Gold.
Well, what I can say, thank you for your question, is that the work that the government has begun to do and is committed to doing is being done in consultation with members of the community across the country. It's with both communities, their leaders, and with experts in the area in order to build not only a more equal and effective justice system, but to address the even broader systemic issues. And that work will continue, and we hope that it will affect transformational change in that regard.
Senator Down.
Senator Gold, Liberal MP Bobby Morrissey has written to Prime Minister Carney requesting that the promised reduction of tolls in Confederation Bridge connecting Prince Edward Island to New Brunswick and the Wood Islands ferry between Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia be reduced in time for Canada Day on July 1st. Reducing tolls by July 1st would allow Prince Edward Islanders, summer visitors, business, and communities to save money and benefit from reduced trade barriers. Given that Confederation Bridge is owned by the Government of Canada and charges over $50 to cross, and the Champlain Bridge in Montreal is also owned by the Government of Canada, but is toll-free, can you confirm if these tolls will, in fact, be reduced by July 1st and restore fairness for Prince Edward Islanders?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for your unrelenting advocacy on these matters in the interest of Prince Edward Islanders and those who travel to and from there. I'm not in a position to, I have no information with regard to the government's intentions, legislative or otherwise, between now and Canada Day. But I will raise this question with the minister when I have an opportunity to do so, and I look forward to this issue being resolved, sooner rather than later.
Senator Dowd.
Senator Gold, you'll be pleased to hear that this is my last question ever on tolls and Confederation Bridge. For the newer members in the chamber, there's numerous questions over the years. Senator Gold, the Prime Minister's commitment to reduce tolls was not limited to Confederation Bridge and the Wood Islands Ferry. He also promised reductions of at least half to the fares charged by the ferry service connecting Surrey, Prince Edward Island to Quebec's Magdalen Islands, as well as the Marine Atlantic service connecting Nova Scotia to Newfoundland and Labrador. Can you also inquire if these fares will also be reduced by Canada Day, And could you also pass on the thanks and appreciation of Prince Edward Island to Prime Minister Carney for finally taking action on the unfair treatment islanders have been receiving for the last decade? Thank you.
Senator Gold.
I will certainly add that to my representations. Thank you.
Senator Wells Alberta.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Senators, hate continues to be on the rise globally and also here in Canada. Most recently, we have seen the Jewish community become the target of horrendous attacks that took the lives of innocent embassy staff. These atrocities are message crimes designed to instill fear and terror in all minority communities. Action must be taken. Canada should lead by example and protect the most vulnerable. In the recent federal election, the government promised legislation to protect our critical social infrastructure, which includes schools, hospitals, libraries, and government buildings from hateful protests. This legislation is essential to protect our vulnerable communities from fear, intimidation, and violence. To the government representative, how soon will this government introduce this greatly needed legislation?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question and for underlining the impact of the rise in hate crimes against my community and many others in this country. It's unacceptable that people cannot worship or indeed express themselves, live or work without fear for their safety. The government has made a commitment to make it a criminal offense to intentionally and willfully obstruct access to any place of worship, school, or community center, and to intentionally and willfully intimidate and threaten those attending services at those locations. The Prime Minister has been very clear that it is simply unacceptable in this country, although far too common, tragically, for people to feel threatened when they gather within their own communities. And this government is determined to stand firmly with Canadians of goodwill and faith and good faith against hate. Having said all of that, I cannot speculate on the timetable for such legislation. We're at that time of year where the immediate government priorities have now been made public, and we will soon be having our work cut out for us. But as soon as the government does make its intentions public, I will be sharing it in this chamber, or my successor.
Senator Wells.
In the last Parliament, the government proposed important changes to the Criminal Code of Canada, designed to strengthen penalties for hate crimes offences and to create a new offence to further protect Canadians from hate. Bill C-63 did not come to a vote in the other place, and in the dying days of the last Parliament, the government signalled it would be prioritising other aspects of the bill. Honourable Senators, I believe Canada must get tougher on hate and send a clear and unequivocal message that hate and extremism will never be tolerated in this country, no matter whom it targets. My question to the government representative, does this government remain committed to tabling legislation that will amend the criminal code as proposed in the previous bill C-63, and will he commit to working with interested senators and community stakeholders to make the changes needed to ensure this important legislation is passed?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for your support of robust legislation to combat hate. I'm just simply not in a position to speculate as to the timetable for legislation or, as you'll all understand, the content of legislation unless and until it has been tabled publicly.
Thank you. My question is for the Leader of the Government of the Senate. Senator Gold. The youth vaping crisis in Canada continues to escalate. In fact, the scale of youth nicotine addiction in Canada is growing much more serious. In their most recent report, Health Canada found that nearly half of teenagers aged 15 to 19 have tried vaping products, with 17% now using these products daily. These are among the highest teen vaping rates in the world. Experts warn that young vapers are more addicted than cigarette smokers and face significant health risks. Despite publishing draft regulations in 2021 to restrict flavored vaping products most favored by these teens, the government has yet to finalize them. The health community is now urging immediate action within the next 100 days Senator Gold, it has been over 4 years.
Wow.
When will this government finally commit to act, finalize the regulations, and ban flavored vaping products across the country?
Yeah, come on, get on. Senator Gold.
Before I provide the answer that you might expect, which is that I don't know, and I'm not able to provide the timetable for that, I did want to take this opportunity, colleagues, especially for those of you who were not here. How many years ago was it when we introduced legislation, or amended legislation, to legalize okay, so for those of you who were not here, I just want to bring to your attention the important work that Senator Seidman did in our study of that bill. In the face of enthusiastic support for any measure that would help people get off cigarettes, and vaping seemed to be and may still be a promising alternative to cigarette. As a former cigarette smoker, I can speak with some authority as to how hard it was to quit smoking. Having said that, but Senator Seidman pointed out some of the unknowns and some of the risks early on, and it was sobering, to if I can invoke that term. And so I just want to congratulate you, Senator Seidman, for your ongoing attention to this matter and your determination to make sure that we're aware and that the government is aware not only of the growing body of evidence associated with this practice of vaping, but also to hold the government to account. So I will raise this with the minister as well, and I want to congratulate you for your advocacy.
Senator Seidman.
Thank you, Senator Gold, for that unexpected reference to the work that, yes, I have done on this issue over the years. Thank you very much. So I was going to say, you've made reference to this already, that it's been 6 years since these consultations began on S5, legislation to amend the Tobacco Act, which we know originated right here in the Senate. The scientific evidence has been building over all these years on a piece of legislation whose objective was said to be harm reduction. When will the government recognize that action is long overdue and act?
Act, yeah. Senator Gold.
Well, again, I don't have a timetable, at least for the specifics, for the matter of the regulations to which you act. We know, as you and I both know, coming from Quebec, that the provinces have a role to play, and some provinces, like ours, have taken steps for some time now to limit, well, in the case of Quebec, to ban flavored products. But that is not the case, I understand, across the country. So again, I'll raise this with the minister.
Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Gold, this past March, over 280,000 Nova Scotia Power customers had their personal data stolen in a major cyber attack, including up to 140,000 social insurance numbers, some of which are now circulating on the dark web. This illustrates just how vulnerable our critical infrastructure is, both federal and provincial. Bill C-26, which could have set federal cybersecurity standards, failed due to the government's own drafting errors and died with prorogation. Senator Gold, will it take another digital disaster for the government to act, or can we finally bring the provinces and the federal government together to pass a bill that will protect our critical infrastructure?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for underlining how important it is that we take steps, both legislative and otherwise, to protect our critical infrastructure. And the bill to which you referred is a matter that, my understanding, is something that will be dealt with in this Parliament. The importance, not only for government institutions, but for businesses to take advantage of the assistance of our world-class institutions, notably the CSE, is something that, for those listening, I would encourage you to explore, because we are the dangers are enormous, as you pointed out, Senator, and legislation will be forthcoming to address this.
Senator McDonald.
For the record, colleagues, Canada was the third most targeted country in the world for cyber attacks in 2024, and now in the first quarter of 2025, there's been almost 6 billion intrusion attempts alone. The Senate sponsor of Bill C-26 had warned, and I quote him, "Without this bill, we do not have the legislative authority to raise the baseline defenses of our critical infrastructure." So, Senator Gold, can the Senate be assured that the new bill will be properly drafted this time? Nova Scotians would certainly like to know.
Senator Gold.
I can give this chamber every assurance that the bills will be drafted with a minute and acute attention to detail.
Senatrice Hébert.
Senator Hébert. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the government representative, Senator Gold. As we all know, the Canadian economy is going through major turbulence right now. In fact, the speech from the throne presented last week sets out strategic commitments for the country's future. This includes the government's desire to strengthen the resilience of the Canadian economy, to accelerate major projects of national interest, and energy projects, including green and conventional energy projects. Yesterday, the Prime Minister met the provinces and asked them to submit a list of projects that meet criteria such as strengthening Canada's autonomy, resilience, and security, being a priority for Indigenous leaders, and so on. As you know, and all that is fine, but one of the main obstacles to major projects can be the approval and implementation process. As you know, the devil can be in the details. Can you please tell us what the government will be doing, apart from these already announced prior studies and so on? What will the government be doing to make sure these processes are fast-tracked, to ensure that the projects are implemented quickly and efficiently? Senator Gold, thank you very much for the question, and thank you for underscoring not only the importance of responding to the challenges we currently face, but also the meetings yesterday between the Prime Minister and the provincial and territorial premiers. There is, of course, an ambitious plan to set up projects of national interest. With regard to the processes, you are quite right. Implementation is often the stage that is that is key to whether a project is a success or not. And the government will soon table a bill that will provide more information on the processes to follow for projects of national interest. And once this bill has been tabled and the details are known, we will have the opportunity to study it here in the chamber. Senator Hébert, thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a supplementary question. I believe that this bill could be of interest to this chamber's members. Do you know whether the government intends to disclose the list of projects submitted by the provinces for this purpose, or whether it has been agreed with them that only the projects selected will be disclosed? Senator Gold, I don't know the answer to your question. The Prime Minister was clear yesterday that this list will be a work in progress, an evergreen list. Of course, there's a whole host of projects considered, and as the projects are analyzed and interested parties present concrete plans for a project, this list will change. As the Prime Minister also said, there will be new projects that will perhaps be identified or proposed once the criteria are better known and defined. For the time being, or therefore, we'll need to wait for the behind-the-scenes work to continue before we can respond to this question. The time for question period has expired.